Good evening, I'm Andrew Chang.
And I'm Adrienne Arsenault. Tonight, slowing the spread of the new variant. More travel bans, testing, and quarantines.
We know it's difficult for all Canadians.
But is it enough to keep Omicron at bay? And to boost or share the shots?
We can win the race, but lose the war.
The best way out of this pandemic.
More rain for battered BC.
There are homes on the verge of falling into the river, and they need help.
The final storm in a destructive series, bringing flood and avalanche warnings as well.
A Canadian held hostage 450 days in the Sahara Desert.
I felt trapped in time.
Until she took matters into her own hands.
We have nothing to lose.
Her daring escape story.
And a 6-year-old's inspiring pre-game pep talk.
Legends are made every day, and you could be one of the greats.
Inspiring well beyond the locker room.
We're gonna do whatever it takes.
This is The National. Well, Canada has announced tougher measures against the Omicron variant, an expanded travel ban and expanded testing at airports.
That is the theme of the response around the world. Block Omicron at borders, but it's increasingly clear tonight the variant started spreading internationally weeks ago. Alberta and Quebec have now joined Ontario and Quebec as 4 provinces with confirmed cases of the variant, all linked to global travel so far. With the exception of those coming from the U.S., all travelers, vaccinated or not, will now be tested and asked to isolate on arrival. That could put some holiday trips on hold, but as Rafi Boudjikanian explains, it may also help hold back Omicron.
Rules have always changed over the last 20 months.
Again, new rules to tackle a new variant.
All air travelers coming from outside Canada, apart from the United States, will now need to be tested at the airport in which they are landing in Canada, whether they are vaccinated or unvaccinated. They will then need to isolate themselves until they get the result of their test.
The federal government is also extending an existing travel ban for African countries to include Nigeria, Malawi, and Egypt, saying their testing isn't as strong as that of other countries with Omicron cases.
We believe that the measures that we have in place are appropriate.
All this as 2 new provinces add to the tally of confirmed Omicron cases, one in Alberta and one in BC.
We're not seeing widespread transmission of this variant in BC yet.
That's a total of 7 confirmed cases in Canada, with the results of hundreds of tests still pending. Some public health experts say playing whack-a-mole doesn't work.
It's likely already been around the world a couple of times, and so we're not quick enough with instituting travel bans, and particularly to individual countries, which probably aren't necessarily the only place where those things exist.
Expanded testing, on the other hand, could have a big impact.
The border is a fine place to do that. That being said, we also need to optimize our testing within Canada's borders as well. And so testing in schools, testing in various other places, and just maximizing our ability to get information on who is infected.
Ottawa is also in discussion with provincial and territorial health ministers on next steps, and it's asked the National Advisory Committee on Immunization for updated guidance on booster shots. Rafi Boudjikanian, CBC News, Ottawa.
Now, Canada is just one of dozens of countries with travel bans focused on Africa. But as Susan Ormiston explains, most of the countries with confirmed cases are on other continents, which throws the origins of and response to Omicron in doubt.
It's a certainty. No matter what borders close or open, COVID-19 travels and the variant has been circulating for a while. The Netherlands has found Omicron in 2 cases nearly a week before South Africa first reported it.
This person had contact with a person who had just returned from South Africa. It could also be that we cannot find the source anymore.
Omicron, with its spiky profile, has now emerged in dozens of places. Japan and Israel, which closed borders, also in France, UK, Australia, Brazil, Canada, and Germany. Omicron identified there in a man with no travel history. We fear December, January, and February and believe things will be more difficult. So with the origin in question and transmission widening, Southern Africans say travel bans singling out their countries are unjustified. South Africa now tied to Omicron, even if unfairly, says the CDC.
Identifying a virus, a new strain or a new variant doesn't mean it came from there. It just means that you have good systems in place to pick it up.
Concerns now that countries monitoring a new COVID variant might be reluctant to report it first. At a U.S. briefing, the CDC director made a point of praising South Africa.
Their collaboration has allowed us to make evidence-based decisions quickly.
But there are still more unknowns than facts. How severe is the illness from the variant, and how effective will vaccines be against it? The White House is considering stricter testing for all international travelers, regardless of vaccination, and weighing a possible self-quarantine. President Biden is due to update his coronavirus strategy on Thursday. Susan Ormiston, CBC News, Washington.
Omicron has starkly reminded the world about the importance of vaccines. Areas with low levels of vaccination can become breeding grounds for variants. Today, China committed 1 billion doses for Africa, but as Christine Birak explains, it will take much more global cooperation to end the pandemic.
Scientists warned us if countries didn't share vaccines with others in need, the virus would continue spreading and mutating, leading to new, unpredictable variants.
More than 80% of the world's vaccines have gone to G20 countries. Low-income countries, most of them in Africa, have received just 0.6% of all vaccines.
So while boosters and third doses are rolling out in Canada and other wealthy countries, only 1 in 4 African healthcare workers is fully vaccinated.
We understand and support every government's responsibility to protect its own people. It's natural. But vaccine equity is not charity.
To end this global pandemic, experts say it's time wealthy countries like Canada release millions of doses sitting in emergency reserves.
Canada has done a lot, and I think we need to be fair.
Canada has donated money and vaccines, but experts insist countries must support long-term production, push companies to offer up vaccine recipes along with the know-how and technology to make them.
It's like baking. You know, you need the baker, but you need the kitchen. You need the oven, you need the ingredient, and you need the recipe.
Same goes for sharing lessons learned from testing, new treatments, and data systems for delivering doses into arms as quickly as possible.
The Omicron variant shows that we can win the race, but lose the war if new variants continue to emerge and we continue to live with this pandemic.
He adds drug companies may blame vaccine hesitancy in public health systems in low-income countries for slow rollouts, but it's not constructive. A global pandemic requires a global solution. Many are hoping this latest variant will push the world to take vaccine equity more seriously. Christine Birak, CBC News, Toronto.
Now, those who are still unvaccinated here in Canada found their world got a little bit smaller today. Anyone over the age of 12 now has to show proof of vaccination before boarding a plane or a train. Alison Northcott now on how it's playing out for travelers.
Cora McCloy is about to hop on a train to Toronto from Montreal and says knowing those on board with her are also vaccinated makes traveling a lot more appealing.
It's made me feel like I can travel, and I don't do a lot of travel. It's just that one small trip was great to get away.
That's sticker.
At the train station in Montreal, Via Rail agents handed out these orange stickers to travelers who proved they're vaccinated.
If you want to go train, you show the security guard, yes, I take the vaccine.
As he prepared to board a plane to Saskatoon, Dave Stockman knew he'd need to show vaccine proof.
It was hard for me because I don't know how to do it on the phone. I'm not tech savvy like some of these kids.
William Moore was on his way to BC for work, but says he couldn't get on his flight because his second shot was less than 14 days ago.
It's pretty pissed off right now. I can't travel. They just changed it yesterday. I'm going to work. I'm not going for some tourist activities. I mean, come on.
The rules have officially been in place since the end of last month, but now the grace period is over and travelers and airlines need to adjust.
That's a practice that's not part of their normal way of doing business. And they have to get trained, and they have to get to understand what they have to look for, what's acceptable, what's not acceptable. And that whole process is going to add time.
I showed up early, but as far as taking longer, to be honest with you, it's been a while since I've flown, so I don't really know, if it's any longer. Or...
By and large, vaccination is the best way.
This expert says vaccines for travel are an extra precaution in the face of uncertainty around the Omicron variant and a potential vaccine incentive, too.
I think that is a big motivator. There's a lot of people who haven't seen their relatives in a couple of years, so they were kind of hoping that this might be that year.
But for those still without the shots, travel options are now much more limited. Alison Northcott, CBC News, Montreal.
BC's battle with relentless rain is on again tonight. A third storm in just a week is hitting the province right now, dumping more water where they simply cannot take it. It's a pretty big storm. It's already been raining for a day. It will continue for hours to come. But when this storm is done, something very much needed awaits, and that's a break. Renee Filipponi is in Abbotsford tonight. So Renee, once again, everyone there bracing, I suppose, for what could come.
Yeah, absolutely, Adrienne. And a big problem today has been localized flooding. That has happened here and in spots right across the Fraser Valley. The road is closed behind me. The entire parking lot for the Castle Fun Park is totally flooded out. And that's because rain has been pooling in these lower lying areas. And it's led the city to issue a small number of new evacuation orders. All this after tireless work to prepare for this storm. Officials and residents are really holding their breath, hoping it doesn't get worse.
As the third atmospheric river poured over Abbotsford, the volunteers did not stop, preparing sandbags to be delivered to anyone in need.
Farms, homes, people who just want to cover their doorstep, barns, animals.
Desperate to protect their homes from more flooding, residents came to pick up supplies.
We're fortunate. We had 1 inch. We have friends who had 3 feet. Other friends had 7 feet and lost their homes.
The city says there is localized flooding and small landslides, but repairs to the dikes have held up.
I am confident that we have done all that we can do to keep our community safe as we go through this final weather event for this week anyway.
Snowmelt is adding to the problem, flowing into already full rivers, and many areas are at an increased risk of avalanches. The rain was also intense on Vancouver Island and BC's central coast. The province is warning people to stay home and off major highways.
Safety remains our key consideration, and if required, we will preemptively close more highways.
That person's house would be somewhere about there.
Further up the Fraser Valley, near Hope, the rushing water continues to cause destruction. The regional district says it has been asking the province for help and is not getting what it needs.
Currently, we have funding requests for critical infrastructure, such as the Wilson Road Dike, where there are homes on the verge of falling into the river, and they need help today.
In response, the province says local governments can take immediate action without provincial approval.
We're doing everything we can to make sure people and communities have the resources and supports that they need.
Heading towards our barns as well.
Meanwhile, on the ground, some can only watch as the water moves in.
We're only into the first 10 hours of this next storm. If it lasts the next 2 days, I think we're going to be into the same situation we were before.
And so, Renee, what is the plan for tonight as the storm continues?
Well, throughout the night, crews will be checking on those dikes, making sure there isn't a breach and that all the work they've done over the past couple of days holds through this storm. There is some good news out of Washington State. Officials there say they do not believe the Nooksack River will overflow its banks anytime today or the next couple of days. That would have brought a lot more water north here into Canada. Adrienne?
All right, Renee, thanks very much. Renee Filipponi in Abbotsford tonight.
Now, senior meteorologist Johanna Wagstaff is keeping a close eye on this storm. So, Joe, which areas are getting hit the hardest?
Well, Andrew, this storm is coming in from a very different direction than our last two. So the rainfall pattern is all over the place. In fact, where I'm standing in North Vancouver, one of the bullseyes that we're watching as we head into the overnight, take a look at the forecast rainfall. This is on top of what we've already seen, and we've already seen 50 to 100 millimeters for places like Tofino on the west coast of Vancouver Island. Farther up the coast from where I am, places like Bella Coola, Squamish and Whistler, and then the northern sections of Metro Vancouver, again, where I'm standing. The lower Fraser Valley and Abbotsford still looking to get totals around 80 to 90 millimeters, not the 200 that we'll see elsewhere, but all that mountain precip will work its way through the watersheds. And Andrew, the other factor, the incredibly high freezing levels. We are seeing snow melting on the tops of our mountains tonight.
And Joe, do we have an idea how long it'll take for all that water to work its way through the watersheds, as you point out, and finally give everyone a break?
There is a delay, so the rain event will end tomorrow afternoon, but we may have to wait until tomorrow afternoon into Thursday for many of our rivers to actually peak, especially with all that runoff. But after that, a legitimate break for the South Coast, a full 48 hours. After that, just showers, not atmospheric rivers. But Andrew, as we round out the end of the month, many stations, including Abbotsford, Vancouver, Tofino, will have seen their wettest month ever on record, with more than double November average.
Okay, thanks, Joe.
You're welcome.
5 Quebec City police officers have been suspended with pay in connection with the violent arrest of 2 young Black people over the weekend. The video shows officers dragging a young Black woman by her hair, as well as punching and kicking snow in the face of a young Black man. Both the police department and the province's police ethics commissioner are investigating the incident, but calls are growing for an independent inquiry.
Well, to the Yukon now, where officials are dealing with a worsening health crisis. The territory now has the highest per capita rate of deaths due to opioids in Canada. Juanita Taylor looks at what's fueling the problem.
This place has many memories for Gary Bailey. It's where he and his daughter Stassity loved to ski.
And I prayed every day for my girl, and really sad to lose her, but at the same time, it was so hard to see her suffer day to day.
In October, the 27-year-old died of an opioid overdose.
She really wanted to get better, but could just never seem to really get to that point.
We're in a deep crisis.
Since 2016, 54 people in the Yukon have lost their lives due to opioids, more than a third of those deaths just this year. All of them are related to fentanyl, a drug 50 times more powerful than heroin.
We have to now stand up and have the courage to face this head on, to try to make a difference together. This is not sustainable.
The pandemic has made the opioid crisis in the Yukon even worse, with the drug supply becoming more toxic and more people suffering in isolation.
It's no longer a crisis. It's a full-blown emergency.
Chief Doris Bill says her Kwanlin Dun First Nation provides naloxone kits to the public. They've also distributed educational material and put money into treatment centers. But she says it's not enough and wants the federal government to step in.
First Nation people are being disproportionately affected here. I think this situation needs as much urgency as the COVID situation does.
The Yukon government recently opened a supervised consumption site in Whitehorse. Gary Bailey wants to see more supports like that. Until then, he has a message for others struggling with addiction.
You're cared for and loved, really not to give up hope.
And he hopes more help will be on the way soon. Juanita Taylor, CBC News, Yellowknife.
In the United States, at least 3 students are dead after a shooting at a Michigan high school.
Fired multiple shots, somewhere in the area of 15 to 20.
Police say at least 8 others were injured in the shooting. The 15-year-old suspect was arrested at the school. Police recovered a semi-automatic handgun along with ammunition. There's no word yet on the motive. And CNN has suspended star anchor Chris Cuomo indefinitely over his role in helping his brother Andrew deal with multiple sexual misconduct allegations during his time as governor of New York. CNN says new documents released on Monday show Chris Cuomo was more involved than originally thought.
A blockbuster trial in the U.S. could be at a turning point. Elizabeth Holmes is facing charges of fraud over her now debunked blood testing company, Theranos. And as Chris Reyes explains, her testimony this week is another dramatic twist in the story.
Another day on the stand for Elizabeth Holmes.
After years of silence, we're finally hearing from the fallen founder of Theranos. By all appearances, a very different person than the cool and collected CEO that once graced magazines and headlined glitzy tech conferences.
I'm the founder and CEO of this company. Anything that happens in this company is my responsibility at the end of the day.
There's a human being on the stand in a lot more ways than there was ever on stage. She doesn't have the gravitas of her technology anymore.
Holmes is facing charges of wire fraud and conspiracy in connection to her company's claims that it could run hundreds of blood tests with a prick of a finger. At its peak, Theranos was valued at $9 billion, but the technology didn't work.
The defense is clearly trying to show at every step that Elizabeth Holmes either didn't know about these problems, or if she knew, she took whatever steps she could or delegated it to another person to take the steps.
In an emotional week of testimony, Holmes accused her co-founder and ex-boyfriend, Sunny Balwani, of rape and abuse. Balwani has denied the allegations. He's awaiting his own trial, also for fraud-related charges in connection to his role at Theranos. In cross-examination, prosecutors zeroed in on efforts to suppress whistleblowers and questioned Holmes on how she and Balwani responded to the media report that eventually led to Theranos' downfall. Holmes denied that she tried to control the media, but admitted that her company's response was a disaster.
I think that the verdict will, either way it comes out, is going to give those in the tech industry a little bit of pause about how aggressive they're going to be in their claims about their products.
One woman on trial, a whole industry awaiting the consequences. Chris Reyes, CBC News, New York.
Tonight, a story of survival from a Canadian woman held hostage in the Sahara Desert for more than a year.
We had this eye contact and like, oh, we might die. Like, this may be the end.
Coming up, the moment she took the biggest chance of her life.
Tiger Woods speaks out about his recovery after his car crash.
There were some tough times in there. There were some really, really tough times.
What he says about a return to the green.
And Barbados celebrates its first day as a republic by celebrating one of its biggest stars.
Rihanna, what do you want the world to know about Barbados?
We the best. And if they haven't been here, they're missing out.
That story in just 2 minutes. Those are some of the massive ships left stranded near Istanbul after a powerful storm battered parts of Turkey, killing at least 4 people. Social media video captured the peak of the chaos Monday. An entire clock tower toppled, trucks overturned, and pedestrians forced to dodge flying debris on the streets.
Well, the world's newest republic is celebrating its independence since cutting ties with the British monarchy yesterday. Barbados is focusing on the future and its international image with a little help from some major star power. Thomas Daigle is in Bridgetown.
Among the first orders of business for the new Republic of Barbados, bestowing the title of National Hero on a certain global superstar. Robin Rihanna Fenty. For the first time, it's the president, not the Queen's representative, doing the honors, granting the award to Rihanna, pop sensation, entrepreneur, and proud Barbadian.
Rihanna, what do you want the world to know about Barbados?
We the best. They haven't been here, they're missing out. They ain't lived a day till they get here.
Call it a surge in national pride, part of a strategy to shed the nickname of Little England.
This little country of ours, just 166 square miles, and so much things happening to us. I am so proud of it right now.
So I think it will work out for the better for us.
Now that Barbados has ditched the monarchy, the Queen remains head of state in 15 countries, most of them here in the Caribbean. The question now is whether any of them will follow the example set by Barbados.
The country's military is getting new colors for the new republic, while the royal police are dropping that title.
In fact, the concept of white supremacy domination over diverse ethnic groups was championed by the British royal family.
Prince Charles saw for himself the presidential flag raised to replace the royal standard, and he acknowledged Britain's troubled history in the region.
From the darkest days of our past and the appalling atrocity of slavery, which forever stains our history.
The heir to the throne giving his blessing to this breakup, not that Barbadians needed it, but
it says to the others that you can do it too. So I would think that Canada would have a similar ambition.
Barbados may be the world's newest republic, though many here wonder who will be next. Thomas Daigle, CBC News, Bridgetown, Barbados.
When we come back, a Canadian's daring escape after being held hostage in the desert for more than a year.
So you and Luca cook up this plan.
We have nothing to lose. I think that's what happened.
From the abduction to the moment she decided to run. Her survival story, next. Welcome back. If I say March 2020 to you, likely you think, oh, that's when the chaos of the pandemic started. There is a Canadian, though, for whom March 2020 represents the greatest time of her life. She's Edith Blais of Sherbrooke, Quebec. 3 years ago this month, she was embarking on a huge trip, driving across parts of Africa. It became a nightmare. She was kidnapped. Incredibly, though, she got out and is now finally telling the world how she did it. Let's start with the ending. It's a good one. After being held hostage in the Sahara for 450 days, Canadian Edith Blais is okay. Not because someone saved her, but because she made a run for it.
When I was alone for so many months, I was like, oh my God, I couldn't see no light at all. And so anything is possible.
And this is you, the sands of time?
Yeah, exactly. I felt trapped in time.
Trapped, terrified. She's a talented artist, writer, passionate traveler who needed her wits, driving across Burkina Faso in a tiny blue car with her Italian friend, Luca Tucchetto. Did your family ever give you the gears about taking this trip?
Well, they were scared, but it wasn't the first time they were scared. Yeah. My guardian angel was tired, I think.
Her guardian angel surely dozed off in December of 2018 as they drove along a potholed, empty road.
Close to the border, when the sun was starting to get down, there was this 6 men, fully wrapped with their AKs blocking the street. And at that point, you just realize, like, oh my God. I remember just looking at Luca. We had this eye contact and like, oh, we might die. Like, this may be the end.
An ambush. Edith and Luca driven into the desert on motorcycles for 20 days at gunpoint. So much blowing sand, she had to take out her contact lenses. Her captors wouldn't let her take her glasses. So that's a big decision when you take out your contact.
Yeah, you feel so vulnerable when you don't see.
They were in the hands of Islamic militants, career kidnappers. From that December until now, there have been more than 600 recorded kidnappings there. Canadian Kirk Woodman would be found dead not far away just a few weeks later. Edith and Luca only understood what was right in front of them.
When we got to the desert, then we realized, okay, this is really big. At the beginning, I was with Luca, and there was a lot of drones, so they were hiding us, actually. They were making little huts out of branches and dry herbs. And it was really, really small, so we were just laying down day and night, one beside the other, and we couldn't even sit up.
3 months like that, then they were separated. Edith drawing maps in her head, holding onto images and timelines, especially of the moment she's told she's going home. It's a trick. She's moved to a rough desert camp and finds 3 women.
I told them, well, they're supposed to bring me to Canada, and I was a little bit mixed up. And I heard the car that brought me there leave. And the women were like, I don't think you're gonna leave very soon.
One by one, they told her they'd been held for 2 to 3 years.
I was going, like, I can't do another month, it's impossible. And they've been there for so many years. It hits you. You try to still hold on hope because, I mean, you can't.
Have to.
Yeah, you have to just keep your head out of the water.
How did you make the time go by together? What did you do?
They had one needle, so we would find threads from clothes or from the tent, or so we could talk. And at one point, there was the oldest one. She had a pen, and that's when I realized that it was like, oh my God, if ever I could like just borrow it, I could write poems and just leave this place for like an hour, 2 hours, just go. And so I asked her, like, can I borrow your pen? And she, of course, please. And we found little cardboards from the tea and stuff like that, so I would write poems each day.
With the needle and those bits of thread, she made this bag, crafted a little hope and peace on it. With that pen, the words flew. At first etched on the scraps of boxes, now marked in print, noting the chapters of her book, The Weight of Sand.
A hand dips into the light. A woman quenches her thirst. For life, a whole river's might flows through the brittle desert. Yeah, I wrote that one on March 19th, 2019. It was the 92nd day of captivity.
The date she knows because the women would recite it together every day for nearly 5 months, all scared, hungry, getting weaker. Did you ever get an indication that someone was looking for you?
They separated me from the women. Then I was alone for 6 months, and somebody that came by motorcycle, and he gave me this red envelope written Edith on top, and that was kind of a shock. There's 3 pictures and 2 letters inside for me. And the third picture was me and my father. We were arm wrestling.
What did the presence of that picture change for you and for your captors?
So I would show them, and they would always point at my father and say, ba, 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 ba. That was really strange. It's like if, I don't know, I felt as they saw I was a human and I had a father, like they were all fathers.
Surviving meant seizing any opportunity, the biggest when she was finally reunited with Luca after nearly a year apart. So you and Luca cook up this plan.
Well, I didn't think we have nothing to lose. I think that's what happened. We had to plan little things because when we went to sleep, we had to give them our shoes. So we couldn't escape very far without anything to protect our feet. So I sewed some shoes with my carpet and some cardboard. And we kept the water from our showers to be able to have some water to escape. It took a month to do all that. And,
a month?
Mm-hmm.
And so how did you pick the day?
So we were hoping like maybe 3 days after the full moon, we would have enough light to be able to escape and see. And life really helped us there because after the 3 days after the full moon, there was this big wind of sand in the night.
So what did that mean? What difference did that mean for you?
And because of the wind in the air, so they couldn't see us. And we had to go through these parts of sand, and usually they could find your footsteps, but the wind just erased everything.
So they bolted in the homemade shoes, that handmade bag stuffed with as many cardboard scraps of poetry as she could manage. All the worry, the furies, the dreams escaping with her.
I did a little pouch that I put my poems in, and that's it.
You must have left some behind, though.
Yeah, I left with 52, and I probably rode like 150. We walked the whole night, 20 kilometers or something, and we found this big road. So we're like, oh, maybe there is trucks going through there.
Finally, one slowed down. Luca ran for it. Edith followed.
So I asked Luca when I arrived, like, can we go up? I think so. He wasn't sure even. So we put our bag, looked like, he looks fine. So we got in, we closed the door, and he left with us. Yeah, that was crazy.
They didn't speak the trucker's language, but he recognized fear. By day's end, they were at a UN office, then moved by helicopter to Bamako. Suddenly, a meeting with the president, Canadian representatives, all of it astonishing. And the date, March 14th, 2020. The world in a pandemic Edith and Luca knew nothing about.
But everything is weird at that moment. I mean, you've been isolated for 15 months and everything was weird. There was so much media also. But I was really happy just to be free, and I was quarantined with my mother. She was really happy.
It was a whirlwind of a day after an eternity of low rumbling fear and isolation. It's taken a while to speak the words out loud. She's learned 2 of the women she was with were freed. The 3rd died in the desert. Luca is home in Italy. They haven't seen each other since. Do you ever dream about any of this now?
When I was writing the book, the whole time I was writing, I was doing nightmares at night. And once I finished the book, it all stopped. It's very rare now that I dream that I'm captive. It's very rare. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Like, I let go, I think.
And those men who stole her freedom? She's met with counterterrorism officials, looked at photos, but has gone no further.
I let go of everything. I try to let go of things that won't change. Like negative things that are not going to change. If I keep it, I just let them go.
Wow, what an ordeal.
Yeah, incredible.
And you know, just listening to her, I'm struck by how okay she seems.
Well, I think she is too. I mean, Edith's very aware that traumas affect people differently and at different times. She's taking care of her health, she's creating, she's writing, she is still traveling, although she says a little closer to home, which is good.
Okay, time for a quick break. Next, we're going to take you inside the work already being done to prepare for the next pandemic. And later.
Legends are made every day, and you could be one of the greats.
A junior hockey team gets a locker room pep talk to remember. We will be right back. Welcome back. The rise of the Omicron variant is a pretty stark reminder that COVID is not over. But while the world continues to grapple with this pandemic, some scientists are busy in labs getting ready for the next one. And as Lauren Pelly tells us, for some, the first step of that process starts deep inside a cave.
These test tubes are tiny, yet they're a treasure trove for this research team.
Out of curiosity, are these spleens or are these kidneys?
Each tube contains a sample of bat tissue, liquefied by a fast-spinning device. They're ready to analyze for viruses that could one day make the jump to humans and spark a future pandemic.
We know that we're increasing our encroachment upon, wild animals with habitat destruction and climate change. The opportunities for zoonotic transmission of viruses from animals to humans are only increasing over time.
Western University virologist Ryan Troyer has been studying animal-borne pathogens for years, researching creatures from bobcats to house cats. He's now among those warning we could see another COVID-level threat in our lifetime.
I think it's not going to really be possible in the future to prevent the transmission of viruses from animals to humans, but if we're ready to prevent a small outbreak from becoming a pandemic, that's really, I think, the key.
When it comes into this machine here,
a key goal of this project is building a bank of vaccines that could prove useful years or decades down the line.
So what we're also doing is we're going to be looking deeper into these tissue samples and trying to get a good look at the entire picture of what other kind of viruses are there. Are they able to have the potential to infect humans? And to try to identify those ahead of time so that we can also put fragments of those viruses in our vaccine bank as well.
Getting to that point is a long way off. This type of research is dependent on fragile funding and partnerships with vaccine developers.
The idea is to have those seeds, or essentially vaccines that can easily be upscaled to production levels.
From the heights of the Amazon rainforest to the depths of underground bat caves, you can find animals carrying potentially dangerous viruses in regions around the world. Throughout history, multiple pandemics have been caused by animal to human spillover. And gathering samples of potential threats is the first step toward preventing another one. In the underbelly of the Royal Ontario Museum in Toronto, Burton Lim stores thousands of bat tissue samples at a temperature of -80 degrees.
These are bats from Guyana.
Some of his samples date back to the late 1980s.
We have a very peculiar, meticulous way of freezing them in liquid nitrogen. That's a lot of work, a lot of extra money and effort to save them that way, but that's the best way to study DNA, is to get them as cold as possible.
Lim has sent hundreds of samples off for analysis so far, just a small selection of the museum's nearly 15,000 bat tissue specimens.
I was excited that I was able to work on evolutionary studies, but if they can help human health, that's even better.
Back in the lab, researchers have identified dozens of viruses in the bat samples so far, and they're hoping to maintain momentum long after the threat of the COVID-19 pandemic fades from public consciousness.
I think this really caught a lot of our public health authorities and governmental authorities off guard. And so now I think we have this real opportunity to really prepare and be ready.
That next viral threat might be hiding in their samples or lurking in a bat cave thousands of kilometers away, just waiting for a chance to strike. Lauren Pelly, CBC News, Toronto.
When we come back, Tiger Woods opens up about life after his car crash.
There were some tough times in there. There were some really, really tough times.
What he says about his future in the game he once dominated. That's next.
Heartland, Canada's most loved family drama.
This whole thing really brought us closer together.
Think about this before you do something you're gonna regret.
He doesn't see me.
Heartland, Sundays at 7, only on CBC and CBC Gem.
I'm Angela Starrett. Tomorrow on CBC's daily news podcast, Front Burner, workers at the Cargill beef plant in Alberta may go on strike. How the pandemic fueled their demands and what it could mean countrywide. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome back. Tiger Woods is opening up about his career and his future after being seriously injured in a car crash earlier this year. He says he is lucky to be alive, but he may never be the player he once was. Julia Wong has the story.
Tiger Woods and his golf game have been in the spotlight for years. But Tuesday, he spoke about his future following a devastating car crash in February, which left him bedridden for months. He nearly lost his leg.
I'm able to participate in the sport of golf. Now, to what level, I do not know that.
Over the years, Woods has undergone 5 knee surgeries and 5 back surgeries, but says this recovery was more difficult. Woods is already hitting the links to practice and hopes to one day compete again, but doesn't know when he'll be able to play at the tour level.
Now, we're talking about going out there playing against the world's best on the most difficult golf courses under the most difficult conditions. I'm so far from that. Now, I have a long way to go to get to that point.
I don't think he's going to be playing in the Masters in 4 or 5 months' time. 6 or 7 months' time in the Open, I think, is the best case scenario at St. Andrews.
St. Andrews, Scotland, home of the most prestigious tournament in golf. Corey Stevens has been playing the game for 30 years and following Tiger Woods for much of it.
His golf game is fantastic, right? Seems to always get himself out of trouble somehow when he's on the course.
Golfers here say there's no doubt Tiger Woods is a world-class athlete, and it doesn't matter how he plays, they'll be watching.
I think it's just great that we're seeing him again, and we'll see what happens.
Oh, sure. I'd be watching with interest.
Woods is notoriously competitive. He admits he has a long way to go, but is up for the challenge.
Sometimes it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back, but you got to go through it.
Julia Wong, CBC News, Edmonton.
Well, coming up, the charismatic coach with a pep talk to match.
We're going to do whatever it takes to get the W.
I love it. The moment this 6-year-old inspired a junior hockey team. Next.
But those dreams just don't come to you. You have to earn it. So how are we gonna do that?
That's 6-year-old Cal Perks filling some pretty big shoes. The head coach of Ontario's Peterborough Petes is away, and his absence, an opportunity for young kids with big dreams. But Cal did more than just announce the starting lineup and give a quick pep talk. He inspired. His electrifying speech is our moment tonight.
Legends are made every day, and you could be one of the greats. Oh, it felt awesome just to be giving the speech and in the room with all the players, with like Jay Ravon and Mason McTavish and Tucker Robertson. It just felt so awesome to be in the dressing room giving them the speech. You were the chosen one. You were the years in the making. So today we work hard, get back hard, shoot hard, spread out, pass hard. So get in there. We're gonna do whatever it takes to get the W. After the speech, I just felt so good because I was like so happy I could get it done and get the boys pumped up, and like it just felt awesome after I did it.
Bravo!
You
Bravo!
tell him, Cal. Listen, Cal, I don't know, my friend, how you feel about giving newsrooms pep talks, but we would happily take one anytime you have one to offer.
First of all, don't give him any ideas.
Hey, why not?
Second of all, we have jobs that we need to keep. Second of all, of course he has dreams of being in the NHL, but a coach, he'd be a natural, I think. That's the National for this November 30th. Have a great night.
Good night.